Hi friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing my February wrap-up. I'm very excited to talk about the books I read in February because I read a bunch and I actually had a really great reading month. So that is very exciting. I'll try and go through this as quickly as I can because otherwise we're gonna be here for ages. So if I'm spinning through some things, I hope you can understand. But I'm glad that I'm filming again. I feel like I've been a bit on and off regarding filming and like sit down videos and stuff. So hopefully I can get back on track with life and booktube and all of that. Before we start talking about the books I read in February, I wanted to talk whether or not I was allowed to draw some prompts from my chest of treasures. If you don't know, I started this book buying game last month. I'm calling it the Chest of Treasures. It's an awful name, but that's just what I'm going with now. And the idea is that I need to complete some challenges in order to be able to draw a book buying prompt. So similarly to drawing prompts for books to read, I'm instead drawing prompts for books to buy. The requirements needed for me to be allowed to draw a prompt is to either read 5 books off of my physical TBR, to complete a readathon, to complete my randomized TBR, and also to complete my extended TBR for the month. If you want to know more about how this book buying game works, I will leave the link where I explain it more in depth somewhere. I actually got to draw in total 3 prompts this month. I did read more than 5 books off of my physical TBR, I did complete the Olympics-a-thon, and I also completed my randomized TBR. So here's me drawing some prompts. I get to pull 2 prompts now because I 1. Finished 5 books off of my physical TBR, and 2. I yesterday just finished and completed my readathon. Let's go for this one. A hardback. Okay. I get to buy a hardback. I want you. Okay. Second one here. Favorite author. Okay. I get to purchase a book by a favorite author. 2 prompts, 2 books I get to buy. 1 hardback and 1 favorite author. Exciting. One thing that happened right before the skiing trip was that I managed to read all of the books that were randomly picked from my February TBR. So I read Frankenstein in Baghdad, XOXO and the Love Hypothesis, and do you know what that means? If I complete my randomized TBR, I get to draw a book buying prompt. Yes. Give me something good. I have a bunch of books I need to buy. So let's see. Here's the prompt. Oh no! A classic! I need something broad. Because I have so many books I need to pick up in March for various TBRs. So I don't think a classic actually fits with any of the books I plan on reading. So yeah, 3 prompts. 1 hardback, a book by a favorite author, and also a classic. Perhaps we will see those books in a future book haul. Let's start with having a quick look at the stats. So in February, I actually read a total of 12 books, which is insane and I'm so happy about it. And actually, I don't remember it now, but the page count for February was higher than for January. So I read more pages than I did in January and I also read more books. So that's pretty cool. If we start by looking at the audience, 8 out of the books I read were targeted towards adults and 4 of the books were targeted towards young adults. If we consider format, 6 of the books, meaning half of the books, were books I read in physical format. 4 of the books I read were ebooks and 2 of the books were audiobooks. Then we have rating, and I actually hit every single star rating that's possible during this month. So I read 1 book that I gave 1 star, 1 book that I gave 2 stars, 4 books that I gave 3 stars, 3 books that I gave 4 stars, and 3 books that I gave 5 stars. I had a good time. Like, I'm so proud of my reading in February. I found it to be both diverse but also fun and exciting. Finally, if you look at the genres, one book that I read was a fantasy, 4 books were contemporaries, 5 books were romances, 1 book was a magical realism, and 1 book was a classic. I'm putting that in like quotations, but yeah, sort of a classic, a modern classic if you may. February was an amazing reading month if we consider the variety and diversity of the books I read, also the spread of ratings, also the amount of 5-star ratings, and just also the amount of books and pages read. So I'm very happy about that. I think the main reason for why February was such a good month was because in February we had the Olympics-a-thon, which is my baby, it's my readathon that I hosted, and there are some difficult prompts in that readathon, so kudos to everyone that participated, no matter how you did, because I know it's not the easiest readathon. I personally aimed to complete all of the prompts, and I did. So I really do give all credit to the Olympics-a-thon for why I did so good in February. Also, it was the month of love, so I did want to do a more romance-centric sort of reading vlog, and I did. So I think that's also why there are some more romance books in this wrap-up than perhaps there is normally for me. Without any further ado, let's just talk about the books. The book I started out the month reading is And Every Day the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. This was the book I read during the first round of reading sprints for the Olympics-a-thon, and it's a hella short book. It's about 70 or 80 pages long. It's about a grandfather who is slowly but surely losing his memories, and he's sitting on this bench talking to his grandson, and they're just, I don't know, talking about life and what goes on in the brain and stuff like that. And yes, this book made me cry. We know this, I love Fredrik Backman, I love his writing. This book just hit hard really quickly, I would say. It definitely made me think about my personal relationship with my grandparents, and it did a lot for being so tiny and short. I do really recommend this. I ended up giving it 5 stars. Most of the books that make me cry, I give 5 stars. Is it my favorite Fredrik Backman? No, it's not. But it's so good. It's so sweet and lovely, and I adored it. Second book I read in February was I Hear the Sunspot, which is a manga, and I believe it's my first ever manga, which is really exciting. I read this because I needed a book that had some sort of disability representation, and this manga features a character with hearing disability. Yeah, it's a sweet one. I read it fairly quickly as well. I read it as an ebook. It didn't really leave an impression on me in that way. It's sweet, but I found it to be a bit confusing. Could be potentially because it was my first manga and I'm not used to reading the panels in the opposite direction. It was a bit jumpy, struggled sometimes with understanding what was going on actually. So yeah, I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's a sweet manga, I don't have that much more to say about it. The third book that I read in February was Iron Widow by Chiran J. Chow, and this was definitely a ride. You can see that I've tabbed it a bunch as well and like made notes and stuff. So if you're interested in seeing like a dedicated review, a video where I only talk about this book, please let me know, because that was sort of my plan for this. If you would want a dedicated review for Iron Widow, please let me know. This is some sort of sci-fi fantasy dystopia inspired by Chinese history, and it's like sort of queer because it has a polyamorous romance in it as well, and it's a lot. This book is so cool, but it's also quite brutal in some ways, like some descriptions about how this world is and like what these women especially are going through. And sometimes it also feels a tad bit fanfiction-ish. I feel like I have a hard time describing this book, but nevertheless it was a very entertaining and enjoyable read. I loved the main character, I loved the relationships in the story, and I'm so excited to read the sequel once it's out. It was a lot of fun, this one. I had a lot of fun reading it. What is it about? It's about a girl who wants to become like a pilot concubine, because there are pilots that are typically men and they sort of are the pilots of these huge machines. So it's not like airplanes, it's machines. That's what they pilot. And these pilots can have female concubines with them, and they sort of draw energy from them to help them become stronger when managing this machine. The main character is basically on a revenge story. She wants revenge for her sister who died while being a concubine. So she wants to become a pilot concubine to get to the people that hurt her sister. And then it sort of just spins on and we realize that this main character is so strong. We get to know the main character and we sort of realize that not everything might be as it seems within this world as well. It's a really cool book in many ways. Especially like the 50 first pages of the book, I was so impressed. I loved every single page in the beginning. As the story developed, as I said, I sort of started to get some sort of fan fiction-ish vibes, which is not necessarily bad. It became a bit too cray at times. And I also really struggled just with this sci-fi part of the story, like some of the descriptions about the machines and everything that's going on and stuff. Like, I could not keep up with that at all. And I honestly didn't care. I mainly cared about the characters and their story. I do recommend this. It was entertaining. I'm super excited for the sequel, and let me know if you want a dedicated review for this, because I do have some thoughts and some comparisons that I think perhaps would be fun to hear about. The next book I read was Frankenstein in Baghdad, and I listened to this one as an audiobook. This is a story that is translated from Arabic. I feel like I had quite high expectations on this one. Like, I had my reservations, of course, but I did expect to enjoy this book, and it was quite disappointing for me to find out that I did not enjoy it. I felt like the story was a bit all over the place. It definitely was not the story I had expected. The plot is described as this man who basically puts corpses back together in order to make them resemble people more, so that they will be deemed worthy of a burial, like a proper burial during this American occupation of Baghdad. So he puts these corpses back together, and then one day a corpse disappears. So it sounds sort of like horror-ish, Frankenstein sort of ish, but like the story was about so many other things. I lost interest when I listened to it. I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't care about their stories. I was very confused. There were so many characters as well. And it didn't live up to my expectations. And it might be that I had the wrong expectations on this book, or it might just be that it's a tad bit boring. I ended up giving it 2 stars. The next book I read was the graphic novel Fence Volume 2. I needed to read a book that featured sport, and Fence was the perfect choice for that. It's a graphic novel story about a school that specializes in fencing or something like that. It's this sort of school where you live in dorms and then they do fencing a lot, and one of the boys is like the best in the nation at fencing and another one is coming up. Since it was the second novel, I did know the characters a bit more, I did know this plot a bit more. It took me a while to get into the story because it's been a while since I read the first volume, so I didn't really remember every single character and what had happened in the previous book. But after 1 or 2 issues, I actually really enjoyed it, and I found it to be very sweet, and I enjoyed the characters a lot. So I actually gave this one 4 stars. It's definitely a quick read, but I had a lot of fun reading it actually. So I'm happy I got to it. The next book I read was Undercover Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. This is the second book in the Bromance book club. I read Bromance book club last year and loved it so much. It was so entertaining. So this was the sequel. There's this book club with dudes where they read romance novels in order to help themselves out with their romantic life. In this story we're following Mac. He owns a nightclub and he's like a playboy, but now he has decided that he wants to settle down, he wants to find the one. He sort of crosses paths with someone and they don't like each other. So it's sort of like a hate to love or annoyance to love sort of story. It was entertaining, it was fun, it was not as good as the first one. But I'm still enjoying the series and I still want to continue to read the other books in the series. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It didn't really do anything special for me, I guess. The next book I listened to was Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, which is the second book in this sort of series. It's basically a book with some short stories from different perspectives about these customers that go to a cafe where you can travel back in time. So you're allowed to travel back in time based on a few conditions. You need to sit at a certain seat, you need to think about a specific point in time that you want to return back to, and also you need to return back to your own time before the coffee gets cold. In both the first book and in this one we are following 4 different characters as they, for different reasons, want to go back in time. I think it's really sweet. I really do like the writing and like the vibes and the atmosphere of the story. I was not as impressed by this book as I was by the first one, which might be mainly because I just knew what to expect this time. Another book I don't really have that much to say about. I ended up giving Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe 3 stars. The next book that I read was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I loved this one. This was actually a reread for me. I actually listened to the audiobook back in November and I did enjoy it then, but it was one of those times when I just sort of rushed through the audiobook because I was trying to fulfill a prompt, so I did not pay that much attention to the story. And I knew already back then that, well, if I buy the book and actually reread it, I'm certain I will appreciate it so much more. This story is translated from Portuguese, and this is the book that I'm considering to be like a modern classic. It was originally published in 1988. It's an amazing book. I had such a good time reading it. We're following this shepherd boy who lives in Spain, and he has this dream that he should go to the pyramids in Egypt to achieve something. Why he should go there? He's not really sure. It's just he has this really strong feeling that he needs to go. And he meets some people on his way that convince him even more that he should go. It's magical, it's philosophical, it's spiritual. It's a really cool book and with so many lovely messages about following your dreams. All of these notes are basically quotes and moments I thoroughly enjoyed, and I do feel like this is a book I can definitely return to in the future and reread. And I will always get something out of this story. It's inspiring, it's motivational, and it's beautiful. And I really, really love this one. For some reason, I only gave it 4.5 stars and not 5 stars. So my Goodreads rating for it is actually 4 stars. Not certain why it's not a 5 star. I might need to up it or I might need to reread it. It is an amazing book. I understand why it's such a popular story. And I do want everyone to read it because it is incredible. Some of my favorite quotes in this one. I'm not typically a religious or spiritual person, but for some reason stories like this about dreamers, I just really connect to. If you start out by promising what you don't even have yet, you'll lose your desire to work toward getting it. Right? This wasn't a strange place. It was a new one. I'm afraid that if my dream is realized, I'll have no reason to go on living. Me, scared. Like, I'm constantly frightened of achieving things and change. I don't want to change anything because I don't know how to deal with change. I'm used to the way I am. Yet the boy felt that there was another way to regard his situation. He was actually 2 hours closer to his treasure. The fact that the 2 hours had stretched into an entire year didn't matter. For me, it means that it doesn't matter how long it sometimes takes you to achieve something or to get to your dream. You're still always on the path and you're still always getting closer to it. Even if you might be distracted by something or go on like this side quest, side adventure, whatever. You're still on the path towards your purpose and your dream. And I just love that. Like, I did not mean to get philosophical in this wrap up, but I freaking love this book, okay? We're afraid of losing what we have, whether it's our life or our possessions and property. But this fear evaporates when we understand that our life stories and the history of the world were written by the same hand. Everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time. Paulo Coelho once said that following your dream is like learning a foreign language. You will make mistakes, but you will get there in the end. That's what I'm saying. I love this book. It's amazing. I'm gonna up the rating to 5 stars because it honestly deserves it. So yeah, recommend this book. Like, read this one. And it's quick as well. It's easy to read. It's less than 200 pages. You can read it within a day or two. It's incredible. Do it. Where were we? We were talking about books, plural. Not only The Alchemist. So sorry, I'm gonna move on. From a book I loved to a book I loathed. The next book and final book I read for the Olympics-a-thon was Winter in Sokcho. This book is translated from French. It's about a cartoonist who goes to Korea and sort of connects with this woman who works in the reception, and they sort of explore Sokcho together, which is a town further up north in Korea. I did not enjoy this book. I thought that it had no purpose at all. It over-sexualized the female characters in the story. It was boring. It was depressing. It was bad. Like, there was nothing. This story gave me nothing. This book in itself motivated me to make an entire video where I ranted about aesthetic books, translated novels, and just stupid books. Because for me, this is a stupid book. Not that the author is stupid, not that the story itself is stupid. It's a book that reminds me of an art piece that is stupid. So it reminds me of a banana taped to a wall, or a blank canvas sold for thousands and thousands of dollars. That's what this book reminded me of. If you want more of this sort of rant, please watch that video. My purpose with that video was never to offend anyone. I hope you understand that. It's just I needed to rant because I was so majorly disappointed, and unfortunately it's not the first time that a novella like this has disappointed me. Please check that out if you're intrigued. But yeah, I did not enjoy the story, I did not enjoy the characters. It was very disappointing and I gave it 1 star. For the last week of February, I actually did my romance reading vlog. Please check that one out if you haven't. You can hear more about these books in depth if you watch that video, but I'm just gonna share some general thoughts and ratings. The first book I read for the romance reading vlog was XOXO by XOXO. It's about a girl in LA, and one evening she meets a guy and they have a great time together, and then they never talk again, and then she gets this opportunity to go to Korea and attend like a performing arts sort of school, and she goes to that school and she meets the guy that she had met back in LA, and she finds out that he's a K-pop idol. If you want a book that reminds you of a K-drama, this is the one. It's amazing. Like, I love this book so much. It was fun, it was cute, it was exciting. It made me very reminiscent about Korea because I was on an exchange in South Korea. It just connected with me in so many ways. I also love and adore K-dramas, and this delivered everything I wanted. So I actually gave this one 5 stars. Is it the perfect book? No. Is it my favorite book of all time? No, but it made me so freaking happy, and I also completely devoured this within less than 48 hours. When a book makes you feel that way, I started reading this Monday evening, I read like half of it, and then during the entire day that I was working on Tuesday, all I could think about was how badly I wanted to return to this book and read it. And when a book makes you feel that way, it's special and it means something. Because of that, because of how this made me just so happy, I gave it 5 stars. The second book I read for my romance reading vlog is a very popular romance book. A very hyped book. And that was The Love Hypothesis. This is a fake dating story about a PhD student and one of the professors, not her professor. And it's a academic setting. I believe that they are more into the chemistry sort of field, so there's a lot of lab stuff. I love this book as well. I feel like I'm falling for the hype, but I really loved and adored this book. I really had no complaints about it at all. I loved the main character, Olive. She was hilarious. The book itself was really funny. I was surprised by how funny I found this book to be. Obviously, I love the fake dating trope. There were a lot of cute moments between the main couple. The banter was good. Once again, it made me smile. And I wanted to keep reading the book. I didn't want to put it down. And it's another book that I finished in less than 48 hours. I had an amazing time reading this, and I also gave it 5 stars. I'm sort of mad at myself that I fell for the hype, but I also completely understand why it is so hyped. The final book I read for my romance reading vlog, and also the final book I read in February, was Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. This is the first book in the Wicked Villains series, and this is a Disney retelling taking place in a contemporary setting where the heroine, or the main princess, gets together with the villain. So this is the Aladdin retelling, and in this story we have Jasmine hooking up with Jafar. And it's a dark romance erotica, I would say. It's very hot, it's very steamy, but I had heard so much praise about the plot for this story. I feel like I had too high expectations on this one for what it actually is. I went into it fully aware that it's a smutty erotic novel. For some reason I just had higher expectations on the plot and like on the characters, the character developments and descriptions, and on the world, and that sort of like did not live up to those expectations, I guess. So I actually only gave it 3 stars. It's an entertaining book. I do think I will read the other books in this series as well, since I am very intrigued by the other retellings. I only gave it 3 stars. It disappointed me in some ways, but also I think I just expected too much from a erotic novel. So that could be on me. Those are the 12 books that I read in February. Like, summarizing it, looking at it, I actually had, I guess now, 5 stars in February. We had a Fredrik Backman, so my favorite author. We had 2 amazing romances. Like, I'm obsessed with those romances. And also The Alchemist, an amazing book. that I'm certain I will reread at multiple points throughout my life, and I feel like I can always learn something from that book. So this is the stack. Quite a solid stack if you ask me, right? Thank you so much to everyone that in any way participated in the Olympics-a-thon. I had a blast hosting it this year as well, and I hope you did too. I have announced the winners of the Olympics-a-thon both in a live show with a bunch of stats and also over on Twitter, so please check that out if you're curious how your nation did in the readathon. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!
You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came